Thank you very much. First of all, I want to just thank Rebecca Eldridge from the town government for making this all possible and for helping us do all of this. So I'm Susan Reberby. I'm the president of the Wellfleet Seasonal Residents Association, which began in 2000. As we state in our mission statement, members of the Seasonal Residents Association hold a special place in our hearts for the many things that make Wellfleet magical. We are committed to preserving the qualities that endow Wellfleet with its unique sense of place, respecting the year-round residents and town employees who have responsibility for managing the affairs and contributing to the health and vitality of the year-round community. We seek to inform our members about important issues facing the town and to facilitate a constructive ongoing dialogue among our members, town officials, and year-round residents. So I'd like to remind you that nothing seems more important at this moment in time, both in Wellfleet and of course across the country, than affordable housing. But if all politics are local, then the local is what we are facing tonight about housing, even as we recognize the issues of infrastructure, movability and not movable jobs, and the pandemic that have all shaped the current housing crisis. Anyone taking a quick look, which I did today, at Zillow for Wellfleet can see the concerns both in the lack of houses to buy at any reasonable amount of money and the lack of affordable year-round rentals. To lead this discussion, I am turning the chairing over to Carl Sussman, a member of the WISRA board, who is also on the 95 Lawrence Road Task Force that is doing the planning for some of the affordable housing that is going to be built here in Wellfleet. After the discussion, there will be plenty of time for your own questions. Please mute yourself until then and only unmute when we call on you and you've used the raise your hand function within Zoom. At this point, I'm turning the meeting over to Carl. Carl.
Thanks, Susan. Third time, I hope, is a charm here. We scheduled this initially in June, and it was canceled because of a ZBA hearing. And then last month we were going to have it, and the sky started falling in at the senior center, so we had to postpone it one more time. So some people who we hoped we'd have here today aren't here, but I see that one person I thought wasn't going to be here is Nancy Lang, so we'll hear from her. I've contacted a number of people who are struggling with housing in Wellfleet and can help us understand what's going on in the housing market, and also a number of the housing activists in town who are involved in a number of different efforts to try to improve the housing situation. So I will be introducing those people as we go along. Our plan is to try to have this as informal as possible, as a conversation rather than formal presentations. And we're breaking the evening into 3 parts. Initially, we're going to hear from some people who can describe their own housing challenges and some of the things that have gone on to try to alleviate that. Then the second part will be with some of the housing activists, initially Jay Coburn and Gail Sullivan, who are going to talk about 95 Lawrence Road, which is the most imminent affordable housing project. And then there'll be a number of other people, Harry Trukanian, Elaine McElroy, and Kathleen Nagel, and others who are on the call, who I hope will chime in with their own perspectives. They've been very involved in various aspects of trying to deal with this issue. So is Melissa on? Melissa Yao, are you there? Well, we'll skip and hopefully she'll be joining us shortly. And Jay Norton, are you here, Jay? Yes, you are. So Jay is the director of the Department of Public Works for the town, and has sort of a typical story of the problems in finding housing for people who work for the town and work in the town. Jay, can you unmute yourself and tell us a little about what's happened for you.
Sure. Thank you, Carl, and good evening, everybody. Again, Jay Norton, DPW Director. Thank you for inviting me to this very important topic. Obviously, it's something that myself and my family went through recently, and it's not fun at all. I'm going to describe it in two ways, more from a personal perspective and our family, and then also my struggle as a department head and hiring people and keeping staff. So I'll keep it in a two-part setting. But basically, we moved here in 2007. I live in Eastham, and I moved here shortly after college, meeting my wife, and came here for an engineering job and raised a family. We lived in a really secure rental where we were pretty much, we had an agreement with our landlords that if we would keep up the property and do repairs and all that, that they'd keep our rent at a fair price, which is great. And we eventually thought we'd buy the house, you know. We really, you know, got comfortable there and made a lot of memories there. And then one of the main reasons why we couldn't buy yet is I had really high student loan debt, which is, you know, typical from a lot of people my age. You know, you get into college, you think you're going to be making all this money after, and, you know, sure enough, your debt to income ratio is not where it should be. So eventually paid off student loans. We're in a position to buy a house. My wife started working full time. She was a homemaker with our we have three daughters that are in the Nauset School District. And it was 2020. So, you know, COVID obviously hit and the market just plummeted, you know, skyrocketed. Really what happened, you know, we went through two realtors. We probably viewed about 20 to 30 houses in the span of a year. We put in offers to 15 houses. We were outbid every single time and by a large margin. And we were even putting in offers over $50,000 to $100,000 over asking price, and waiving the inspection and anything we could possibly think of to try and look a little more competitive. So it was heart-wrenching. You know, it's just, you just go through the rigmarole and you can't get your heart set on any house that you really look at, because, you know, you pretty much know the outcome. We're competing with people that have cash, you know, buying houses with cash. So their offers obviously look a lot more competitive and reasonable to the sellers. So we actually really lucked out, and my in-laws live in Eastham, and they actually live across the street now because of this, but their neighbors were selling and they knew of our difficulties securing a house, and they offered to sell us the house without going on the market, which was fantastic. So we really, really lucked out, and I know that doesn't happen very often, so it's kind of an anomaly in this situation, but it's really a problem, and it's affecting, you know, people from all wage earnings, from seasonal employees up to department heads. So even though we went through a private sale, the market's still, you know, our house is, you know, in the low 600,000. So it's still, you know, really, really, our mortgage is astronomical, but I'm grateful. We love our house. It's amazing. That we couldn't be happier. So that's kind of my story, and I just wanted to relay that to everybody. And then as a DPW director, fortunately, most of my staff has already, you know, been established here. They've grown up here. So there's not many issues with full-time staff, but I do see a lot of problems with seasonal employees. So usually we'll have 8 to 10 people in the summertime, and we currently only have 4. So we're down about 6 employees, which is really major in the summer. We're stretched thin. I don't think it's going to get any better. But this is something that there needs to be some creative thinking on how to help, people across the board. Obviously, affordable housing is amazing. But, someone like me, I wouldn't reach I would surpass any thresholds for income to qualify for any affordable housing. So it's, people that make a little more money that wouldn't be eligible for that. Needs to be some thought into that as well. But thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Jay. I appreciate it. So that's a homeowner story, which is a challenge. We also have a lot of renters who probably even face greater challenges in finding year-round housing. So we had actually planned to have Ginger Lund, who is a baker, join us, but because of the change in schedule, she wasn't able to. But Sharon Ruhl-Ager is familiar with her story and has offered to talk about what her experience was like. Sharon, can you unmute yourself?
There
you are.
Sorry.
Hey, Sharon.
Hi. So, I don't know that much about Ginger's story, except that I know she was excited to be speaking to this group because she felt she had a story. And the little she told me was that she had moved probably 4 or 5 times in the previous 4 years before she moved into this ADU that I'm going to tell you about.
I just can add, Sharon, that I spoke with her last month, and she moved to the Outer Cape in 2016, and she moved 8 times in the first 3 years.
Okay, there you go. And when I first met her, before she moved into this accessory dwelling unit, she was living with roommates, which is, fine. Many of us do that, but at a certain point in life, it gets a little old. So anyway, my name is Sharon Ruhl-Ager, and I'm a member of several of Wellfleet housing committees. And quiet. So several years ago, with other housing advocates, Elaine is on this call as well, we started working on changing Wellfleet's accessory dwelling unit bylaw to make it easier to manipulate, to take off the affordability piece and some other things like that.
Sharon, can you just explain what an ADU is?
I'm getting to that.
Good.
So just stay tuned. And this new bylaw was passed unanimously at town meeting in annual town meeting of 2021. An ADU, so that's accessory dwelling unit. And the bylaws in different towns, if you go to each Cape town, you're going to find some variation in the regulations. But in Wellfleet, under Wellfleet's new ADU bylaw, it has to be less than 1,200 square feet, an independent apartment with full kitchen and bath, that's located on a lot with another principal structure, which could be either a house or a business. The rent charged and the tenant's income are unrestricted, but the one main restriction is that it must be rented and or occupied year round. No short-term rentals allowed. And the homeowner must file an affidavit yearly stating that they will comply with this requirement. Also in Wellfleet, the homeowner is not required to live on the property, and that's a difference from some other towns. So shortly after the passage of this bylaw, my husband and I were sort of itching to create one. And we had some friends who were new homeowners, a shellfishing family with young children, very little time, very little money. And they had a dilapidated structure on their property in addition to their house, which Carl will show you in a moment, I guess. And that structure was built in the 1920s and moved to the property. That's the after picture. If it started like that, that'd be great. So It's about 400 square feet, and it was in very poor shape. Can you show the other picture, Carl? Do you have that?
Yeah, 1 second.
And it had previously been used to house 6 summer employees of a previous owner. So in any case, it was uninhabitable. It hadn't been used for 15 years. And David and I thought it looked like an appropriate project. So we got a building permit. That was not so easy. And we started doing a lot of the work on the project ourselves. And then like we did all the demo, like pulling out the old insulation and stuff like that. It was pretty funky. And then we hired local subcontractors to do the skilled work, and we were the labor for them. And so we worked on that probably from September to December. And then it was finished. And then Ginger moved in. And she was very, very happy. It was really a labor of love for us. And it really made a difference in her life. And I will also say that we financed the project, but it's being paid back through the rent. So every month Ginger's rent comes to us, and that will be paid off in about 10 years. So ADUs on their own aren't going to solve our housing crisis, but they are much quicker to put into place, and it's something that homeowners can do themselves, whether they are year-round residents or seasonal residents. They can be inside the house, they can be attached to the house, they could be in a separate building, they could be over a garage. There's many possibilities. And I'm happy to say that there's also a lot of assistance available now to help property owners. And I'm hoping that maybe Jay Coburn will talk about that a little bit more, because they have kind of an exciting new project at CDP to assist people who are interested in building accessory dwelling units. So
Thanks, Sharon.
yes.
I know we're going to hear more from you later on. You're involved in so many of the housing issues here, housing initiatives.
We have a team.
Yeah. Nancy, are you there? Nancy Lang? Can you unmute yourself?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. Hi, Nancy.
Hi.
So Nancy was a homeowner in Wellfleet, and she sold her house in a very interesting way. And I thought it'd be great to hear her story, because I think it's useful for seasonal residents to hear about this possibility.
So my name's Nancy Lang. I live full-time in Cambridge, and but I had a home in Wellfleet that I used 3 seasons really. It was a winterized house, and I had bought it in 1999. And I got to an age that it was becoming harder and harder for me to manage the upkeep and the renovations that I knew it needed. My kids were not interested in taking on the task, and I decided that it was time to sell. So I talked to Kathleen Nagel, who may be on this call, I'm not sure, about the value of my property and what I could sell it for. And she told me about a program in Wellfleet that where you can sell your house to someone local, which that's what I wanted to do, was sell my house to a local family. And I didn't really require like a massive, like the best price, but just a reasonable amount of money. And she said there was in fact a program exactly like that, and that there was someone who had already been vetted, who was eligible for the assistance that they could get to help them purchase a house that had certain restrictions, 3 bedrooms, a certain amount of money, and like it took, I think it was like about 3 weeks, the house got sold. And the young woman who lives there now with her 2 kids is so perfect for being a young woman who's lived here all her life. She has kids who go to school here, and I feel very good that I'm in a position to be able to sell a house to someone, because I know that Wellfleet, the people in Wellfleet need housing, and that I was able to do that and sell it to her. I sometimes wonder how much I didn't get, but not very often. And I think that people who have enough in their lives, enough cash, enough whatever security, that it really is a nice way of passing on an inheritance to the community that has given so much to me. I had 2 kids that we spent summers there. As I was a teacher, and I used to spend a lot of time in Wellfleet, and I miss it very much. But I have friends who have rented me cottages, and you know, so I'm able to do the activities in the summer that I miss. But I also was able to use that money to do something else for another member of my family, and it's just worked out to be as if it was preordained. And I think that you know, it's something for everyone to consider if they're in the position to be able to think of something like this and have the understand the consequences, and you know, that it's what I got, the amount of money that I got was reasonable. It was not the high, crazy developer kind of amounts of money for that houses are being sold for these days. But it's a nice home, and now that house will stay in the affordable housing, you know, group, and so that the person who lives there now will not really be able to resell it at an extravagant amount of money, but it will always be there for an affordable house for local people to live in. So
Nancy,
that's
you're a
my story.
great role model.
We'll
And
see.
I don't think many people know about this buy down program. I don't know whether Kathleen or Harry Turkanian want to just explain a little about how it operates.
I also wonder how many people in Wellfleet who need that kind of assistance. I wonder if they know about it. And or you know, if I just don't know how that information is communicated around. So
Harry or Kathleen, you want to jump in here?
Okay, I'll take a crack at it, and then Kathleen can clean up my mistakes. Basically, what happens is we contribute about $175,000 to $185,000 toward the purchase of the house, in exchange for which we get a deed restriction that permanently restricts it as affordable. So it makes it possible for someone who is income eligible, but who wouldn't otherwise be able to purchase a home, and in exchange we get a permanent affordability restriction. It tends to be probably the least expensive way to create an affordable housing unit. But at the same time, you're only creating one at a time. So if your goal is to create 100 of them, it's not a quick fix. And that's I guess, a thumbnail sketch.
Thank you. And I think the we in this case that you were describing is the Wellfleet Affordable Housing Trust.
And originally the Housing Authority ran the program, but the Housing Trust, we will see ourselves as the bankroll for most of these projects going forward.
It's a vehicle for raising money for this purpose from individual donors.
Correct.
Good. Thank you very much. And it doesn't look like Melissa has joined us. Oh, yes, she has. Hey, Melissa. Do you want to introduce yourself and describe your housing search?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
You're fine.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So I live in a year-round rental right now. I'm incredibly lucky to have kept it since before COVID. I know of many people around town. I have friends who have been uprooted by landlords who decided to sell their home, and they've lost their housing altogether and have had to move out of town. So I'm incredibly lucky to have what I have, even though it does come with difficulties. But because I am in a sensitive housing situation right now, I've been actively looking to buy a house, and I'm struggling to find one that's within my price range. As I'm sure you all know, all of the prices have skyrocketed. I'm not really sure when they're going to come down, if at all. The biggest issue really is the lack of inventory on the market. There's really nothing to work with, and I feel like I'm reaching for something that maybe isn't the right choice, which doesn't even feel good. I have tried to go for some houses with assistance from family because I need the extra boost, and even that I've been outbid from other people, not even people from out of town. I was recently outbid by somebody who's a local business owner who needed housing for their workers. So this is a problem that I think is being felt by a lot of people around town, and also highlights the fact that we also have a worker shortage because we can't even find a place to house all of our workers. I run my own business, and I don't have an employee because I feel like I can't afford to have the responsibility of providing a living for somebody to be able to afford here. But eventually I'm going to need an employee. And I think that's also an issue that I think about. Yeah, I'm not, is there anything specific that you wanted me to share?
How long have you lived on the Outer Cape?
I have lived in the Outer Cape for about 7 years. I am a shellfisherman, so I require I have to keep my residency in Wellfleet in order to keep my job. And I've started a business as in self-employment I'm running my own shellfish farm and harvesting from the wild. So that's my everything. And if I were to lose my housing, I could lose my job. So, and that goes for any other shellfisherman in Wellfleet.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. These are, I think, good examples, both of the challenges people have becoming homeowners in Wellfleet and really any of the communities on the Outer Cape. And year-round rentals are extremely scarce. And that's why the ADU that Sharon described, I think, is a really nice example, even if it is, one at a time, getting these units into the housing stock. I think I'd like to kind of shift gears a little and begin to talk about some of the things that are going on to address the housing crisis. The most exciting and most imminent one is 95 Lawrence Road, which is a 6-acre parcel that the town owns across from the elementary school. And the town issued a request for proposals last year, got 3 developers to submit proposals. And the winning proposal came from 2 nonprofits, Preservation for Affordable Housing, better known as POA, which is a very large national developer and owner and manager of affordable housing, and the Community Development Partnership, which serves the Outer Cape, is officed in Eastham. And I wonder, Jay, Jay Coburn is the executive director of the Community Development Partnership. I wonder if you can just talk a little about the project and maybe have Gail describe what's going to happen there.
Sure. Carl, thanks so much for inviting us to be part of this forum, and thanks to folks for attending this, particularly during our busy summer season here on the Outer Cape. Maybe I could just provide a little bit of background on the project, and then Gail can jump in with some of the details as being kind of the brilliance behind its design. But so I, as Carl said, run the Community Development Partnership. We're a nonprofit community development corporation. We serve the 8 Lower Cape towns and have a mission to lead the region in building a stronger and more diverse year-round community of people who can afford to live, work, and thrive on the Lower Cape. And so we do that by supporting small businesses and nurturing entrepreneurship, and also by working to solve the affordable housing crisis in our region by owning and managing affordable housing, helping to develop it. Talk later about our new ADU Resource Center to help homeowners create accessory dwelling units on their properties. And I think one of the fundamental things to understand about this challenge that we face in our region, and why our collaboration with Preservation of Affordable Housing has proposed such a big and bold solution, is that we have a fundamental disconnect in that the price and value of our housing, both rental and ownership, has nothing to do with our local economy. And particularly on the Outer Cape, where part-time resident home ownership exceeds 60%. In my town where I live in Provincetown, and in Truro, it exceeds 70%. It's just the prices are driven by folks who understandably want a piece of paradise and have deep ties to this community and want to be part of it, but also have incomes derived in Boston and New York and points in between that give them a lot more buying power than the folks who live and work here year round. And so I really want to commend the town of Wellfleet for doing lots of things over many years. Elaine McElroy is with us tonight, and Harry Kenny and other members of the Wellfleet community really have been trying to come up with lots of innovative solutions and really deal with this issue that really has been 2 generations in the making. But we really have reached a point where we've got to go big if we're going to hold on to a thriving, alive community, which is what draws second homeowners to our community. It's the artists, it's the restaurants, it's the culture, it's the people who make this, the writers, people who make this just such an interesting and wonderful place to be on top of its natural beauty. So the town, as Carl said, did put out a request for proposals to build up to 46 units. And so what we have done is really come forward with a bold proposal, which really resonated with town leaders, to build high quality, affordable housing. And because we're building so many units, that we can address a range of different incomes and household sizes and respond to some of the issues that Jay Norton raised earlier about folks who don't make too much money to qualify for affordable housing, but don't make the $180,000 a year that you need to make to afford the median home price in Wellfleet. We have crafted a proposal that is environmentally sustainable and will be nearly net zero, if not net zero, in energy consumption. And that we've tried to create a community with a resilient and elegant design that draws on the local mid-century modern building traditions of Wellfleet. And so I'm really excited by what we are now have before the zoning board. It really represents a once in a generation opportunity to build a considerable number of affordable homes. that are going to provide a diverse range of Wellfleet residents that can serve seniors and families that living on modest incomes to working families and empty nesters who are struggling to downsize into local housing that they can afford. It's going to feature a mix of unit sizes, a range of affordability, a building design that is going to attract financial partners because it's going to cost us more than $20 million to build this. And our project is going to be built to the highest level of environmental sustainability. It's going to be healthy, all electric. There'll be no fossil fuels used in this property, and incredibly energy efficient homes that preserve the existing landscape on this project and really minimize the environmental impacts to the surrounding neighbors. So let me turn it over to Gail, who I think may have brought along some pictures of the project, which is currently before the ZBA and Wellfleet seeking approval of and a permit to build. Gail?
I think you overlooked one factor, Jay, which is to mention that it's 46 units.
Yes, sorry, 46 units of affordable and some market rate housing.
And it's rental.
Yeah.
So, Gail, can you share your screen? There you are. Gail, by the way, is not only a great architect, but she's a seasonal resident. So glad to have her working on this project.
There, sorry, took me a little moment. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Jay, and thanks, Carl. And I will start with a little bit of a personal note. A little over 6 years ago, my partner and I finally, after about 6 years of looking, bought a home here. And I'd been hearing for a while about the issues on the Outer Cape from friends who live here year round around affordability. And so quickly decided that if I was going to be part of the problem in buying a second home, I needed to be part of the solution. So I literally chased this project. I pursued POA and CDP. Luckily for me, they decided to choose my firm, Studio G Architects, to do it. So I'm personally, as well as professionally, really excited to be involved in this. And with that, I'll get on with showing you. Okay, let's see here. It was working before there. So as Jay mentioned, it's 46 units. It's a range. And so I'm going to use the lingo we've been using. This won't be permanent, I don't think, but Upper Village and Lower Village, just to distinguish them, because for people who know this area around the ball field, there is quite a height difference. So the Upper Village is this area that's right around where the small parking lot is. That was the temporary parking lot for the police station when it was being constructed. And this is 2 and 3 bedroom townhouses. So except for the 3 bedroom fully accessible unit, they are 2 stories. And so meant really for families. So it comes off of Lawrence Road, as you see here, and very deliberately, I'll get into this a little more, but I think the aerial shows it pretty well. There's a whole lot of things we're trying to do here. First and foremost is provide the affordability, but we also, as Jay said, wanted to make it beautiful, wanted to make it fit in to Wellfleet, but fitting into Wellfleet in the 21st century, not in the middle of the 20th century, and certainly not in the 19th century. So we wanted the housing to reflect the moment that we all exist in, and to us, a big part of that is a very high aspiration around sustainable green design, but also around making a place that really creates community for the residents of this development and between those residents and the rest of the town. So all of those things are kind of baked into the way we've approached it. So you see here, houses face each other along a street, it curves. At the curve right here is a small community building, and that serves primarily the Upper Village. I'll get into a little more details later. What we're calling the Lower Village, so this is along Long Pond Road, kind of at the corner of Lawrence. And this is a 3-story building with an elevator, and it's 1 and 2 bedroom units. So more oriented towards smaller households, towards some of the seniors that Jay was talking about, because we were trying in this one development, since it's the first of any size, to accommodate the full range of households who need affordable rental housing. It is 100% rental. So, oops, I'll just move. So here's a little bit about the organization, and folks here may or may not care, but about the buffers and so forth. But this is, as Jay mentioned, a sizable site. It's 6 acres, and we started out with an intention to build on as little of it as possible and to build as much of what we were doing as we could on already disturbed land, so that we were leaving as much of the woodland alone as we could do. So the whole back section of this, which slopes down toward kind of not the very end of Old Long Pond Road, but kind of further down Old Long Pond Road, we're not touching it at all. And then we were keeping a minimum 30-foot buffer along all property lines. And that is meant to be a very deep buffer. It's all wooded now, except at Lawrence Road. We intend to restore whatever is not wooded when we finish the project. And this shows the basic organization. The townhouses are in groups of 3 like this one, or 4 like this one. There are 2 stories I mentioned. This is a 3-bedroom, one floor, fully accessible unit. One of the things about this is because it'll be funded with public money, it needs to meet the Fair Housing Act, which means that every single unit in this development will be visitable by somebody who's mobility impaired. So you have to be able to get in the front door in a wheelchair, you have to be able to move around, get into a bathroom, and so forth. So when I talk about the accessible units, I'm talking about the units that are fully designed for somebody who's mobility impaired. In addition, there are a couple of units that will be designed for those who have sight and or hearing impairments. So we're really trying to be as inclusive as we can and meeting not only state regulations, but federal guidelines. And here's a landscape plan that gives you a little idea of the intentionality in the way that we're approaching the landscape, which we see as very much part of making a healthy and sustainable community. So everybody will have a front porch, they'll have a back patio or deck. In these units, they'll have decks because the ground is sloping down in that direction, going north. But everybody else, it'll be a patio on the ground. So they have some outdoor space to claim as their own. And then it just kind of shifts into shared outdoor space. The community building here will have a small natural children's play yard back here and community gardens. There's a maintenance building. It's actually on this plan shown in the wrong place. It's actually over here right now. And then there's a path that connects, there's sidewalks up here in the upper village and connected to a path that will be accessible, that will bring people down to the lower village elevator building right here. So as you can see, it's just wrapping the ball field will buffer. There's already a lot of tree buffer along the fence line of the ball field. And where that doesn't exist, like right here, we'll be replicating what's there. So when done, these houses will be nestled into a woodland landscape. One other thing to mention, people probably know this, but this is the access to the water tower. And so we're staying away from that and doing nothing on this other side of the water tower or all of this dark green. We're just leaving it. So there's about 3 acres of the 6 acres that we're simply not touching. Oops, sorry. This is the landscape architect's notes here. I'll just move through them quickly. And then as for the building design, Jay mentioned a reference, and we have referenced in the design both the vernacular Cape Cod houses, which tend to be very simple, built for their functionality, and the mid-century modern. So as I said, we're building in the 20th century, not even the 21st century, not even the very beginning of the 21st century at this point. So we want these houses to be modern and to stand the test of time and to be from their moment. So a few things about that. Daylight is really important, right? So maybe in the houses built in the early 1920s, people weren't so focused on bringing good daylight into the homes. That is a big focus for us now. So high performance windows, very energy efficient, but also a lot of daylight. So you can see we have very large windows, relatively high ceilings to accommodate those large windows and bring a lot of natural light into every living space. And you can see there's kind of a variety. We've jogged the buildings back and forth to create a little privacy. So each unit has a little private zone of entry with a porch canopy. And you can see then this is a separate unit, and they keep doing that. Each building is a little different. There'll be a few different colors. They'll all be fairly natural palette. Perhaps the community building and like a barn red, but other than that, they're going to be cedar looking, grays, etc. And this gives you a little bit of an idea. So this is, if we took a huge saw and cut along the street, it's a street elevation, just to give you a feeling for the variety that we're looking for here in the design. One of the things that's always bothered me about earlier in the 20th century, it's kind of the beginning of my career, public housing and affordable housing is attended because people thought this was the least cost way to do it. To have every single building be exactly the same, we are really deliberate in not doing that. So every building here will actually look a little bit different. They won't be very different. This is kind of a Lego kit. So their units are repeating, but how it looks to people on the street will not repeat. So that there's a character for everybody's home. And everybody feels like that's my home when they go there. The other thing I should note about this, because you'll see roof lines, and the roof lines are varying. We're doing everything here within 15 degrees of due south for passive solar orientation. All the roof lines are designed to maximize photovoltaic solar electric panels on the roofs. And that's why they are all either facing west or facing south. So that's really literally and figuratively shaped the design. This is a cut. If I cut it across the road, looking at two buildings facing each other, and this is one of the first two clusters of townhouses, just to show that what we've found because of the slope on the site, the natural slope, that we're going to end up doing basements under just the first 7 units on the north side of the road. These will be utility basements. One of the abutters in a site walkthrough that I've done asked, where are people putting all of those outdoor things that all of us in Wellfleet have, you know, the paddleboard, the surfboard, the kayak, whatever it is. And so these will actually be shared basements for all the tenants to store that stuff. I won't get into that. This gives a little analysis of the different elements that have been thought through that are the elements we're using. So banded windows, cornering a lot of the windows again for maximum daylight, but also frankly, to direct people's views away from other people's apartments, because this housing is denser than, except for in the center of town, it's denser than most housing is in Wellfleet. And so we want to make sure that people still have a sense of privacy. The split gables allow some clear story windows into bedrooms on the second floor. We have stacked transoms again to give people more daylight into those upper floor spaces. And everybody will have a little bit of a private front yard, semi-private front yard. This is the community building. There's a couple of things that are important about this. First, typically in an affordable housing development like this, we'll have at least a community room. In this case, people will get their mail in the entry to this community building. There is an office right over here where the property management staff can meet with people. They will be full-time on site, not always full-time in that office. I'll show you another office in the lower village. And then very importantly, a laundry. So one of the things we're doing in terms of the sustainability agenda is there are not washers and dryers in the individual units, because that's actually much harder to achieve passive house certification if we have dryers that vent. So we're putting all of the washers and dryers into the community building. It also then encourages community. And then with the amenities around it, the community space with the kitchenette, the gardens and the play space behind, we want to draw people to this because this is how you build community among the residents. So now I'll shift to the lower building, the lower village. And this is a view. It's actually, this is an old view from our developer submission. It's actually somersaulted the building. It's flipped 180 degrees in the other direction. So this is actually over at the east side, but the design is exactly the same. So you come into a front lobby here, again, mail, packages, access to an office. This is where the property management staff will probably spend most of their time in this building, but they'll be able to go back and forth. And then you can see 3 stories, and part of, because I know 3 stories is a little unusual in Wellfleet. So part of how we're trying to break the feeling of that mass is you see here, we're changing from the horizontal siding below to a vertical siding above, just to get a kind of a distinction, kind of a bottom and a top, sloped roof. And again, this is to maximize our photovoltaic panels. And here's a view of the community patio, which is right outside the community room here, which will also have a small kitchenette. And again, a section cutting through, because there is a lot of topography on this site. So this building will be just about in the same face, this face of it, as the existing abandoned building on site, which I believe is the old COA building. So we will not be any further toward Long Pond Road than the current 1-story building is. We do have a parking lot behind. There are 24 parking spaces here, 22 units in this building. And then the exact stepping of this may vary from what we've shown here, but what we're doing is we're going to terrace the landscape here because there's a pretty big step up. It's over 10 feet to get up to the ball field. And there's a walking path that I mentioned that's going to be right along here. And then a little idea from the landscape architect of the kind of plantings, very much looking at native Cape plantings with a few specimen trees in front yards. And you can see bayberry, inkberry, swamp azalea, bearberry, a lot of things people are probably familiar with in your own yards. And this is very much the kind of planting that we'll be looking at. And then a little note on the community open space. Carl knows about me. I really love children's spaces. The other thing I do besides affordable housing is design for kids. So we want a natural play yard that will just integrate into the landscape and give way freely to the landscape for the kids. And I mentioned, and Jay did, sustainability and climate resilience. So I talked a little about how we've oriented the buildings for passive solar orientation. But the rest of what I want to mention is the strategies we're using here. So as Jay said, all electric. This will be a very robust system of air source heat pumps. There will be energy recovery ventilation, which means continuous ventilation from all spaces all the time. And that's part of how we make sure that a building that is as tight as this one will also have enough fresh air for people, right? So it's finding that right balance between a very tight building envelope and continuous ventilation to make sure that people don't have stale air, but they have fresh air to breathe. And of course, with no fossil fuels, we have no combustion issues. There will be electric, not gas stoves, water sense plumbing, and What else did I want to mention? And then I mentioned the photovoltaic panels. We use nothing but no VOC materials on the inside. And we pride ourselves on being able to design housing that actually really helps reduce the incidence of asthma for folks who have asthma by having a really good indoor air quality. So I won't get into the technicalities of that.
Yeah, why don't we skip that for the time being? But you could go back to that last slide, which I think is the one with the ZBA process.
Oh, yep. Yeah.
So these are the scheduled hearings.
Yes.
And so people who are interested in the project, who want to comment on various aspects, these are the dates that you should be aware of. And
It's Thursday night.
Yep.
Right here. Yep.
Good. Thank you. That's great.
And I'm going to stop sharing. If I can figure out how to do that.
I wonder, while we're waiting, whether Sharon and Kathleen or Elaine, all of whom I think are on the Maurice's Campground Task Force, whether you want to describe that, because it's, I think, the other large-scale potential project in terms of adding to the supply of housing.
Elaine, do you want to do that?
Sure. I'd love to talk about Maurice's briefly, but then I'd also like to talk about the things we are doing and how people can be involved. But I think most of you probably know that there's a very exciting possibility in front of us, that the town has signed a purchase and sales agreement for the 21.25 acres at Maurice's Campground, a beautiful level piece of land right between Route 6 and the bike path. This will come before the town meeting on September 10th. The purchase price right now is $6.5 million. The Community Preservation Committee will be contributing some money to help bring down the cost to the taxpayer. And our select board chair, Ryan Curley, has also come up with some really wonderful ways to use some of our other receipts to help bring down the cost. And right now, the estimate is that if we are able to purchase this, it will cost the average taxpayer about $80 a year. So I think this is an obvious example of when community does something together, it can make something very important happen without it being, a crazy burden on anyone. So the thing about Maurice's and 95 Lawrence, when we create this kind of housing, it's permanently affordable to people. Right now, the people that struggle with rentals, the wonderful people that rent don't always have to rent, they can change their mind. The housing that we create, as long as you are a good tenant, pay your rent, you're able to stay there. So it really gives people a chance to put down their roots in the community and contribute. But if anybody has questions, I'm sure we could entertain some, but I would love to let people know about what we are doing and how they can get involved at some point before we're done tonight.
That's still, we will get to that before the end of the evening. It's one of our goals to see how we all can help resolve some of these issues. Susan, you're I think tracking questions. Do you want to point us in the right direction?
Okay, sure. So hold on just a second. So the first hand that's up is Sharon's. So
Hi.
Hi, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Elaine said, that if the voters should approve the purchase of Maurice Campground, then following that will be a period of planning, of community visioning. And that is an opportunity for all members of the Wellfleet community to get involved and speak up and share what they'd like to see happen there. I mean, it's good. The idea is that we'll be housing, but it's with that big a parcel of land, there's an opportunity for quite a variety of housing. And so I encourage your Wellfleet seasonal residents to get involved in this visioning process. Thank you.
You. Okay, Carl, I'm going to call on other people. Is that okay
Yeah.
now?
Go.
Okay, so next person is Bob Thomas. So Bob.
Thanks very much. I just had a quick question about eligibility for affordable housing and whether it's 95 Lawrence or it's the Maurice Campground. Will that housing be available to people who live outside Wellfleet, or will it only be for Wellfleet residents?
Carl, I can try to answer that question if you'd like. Certainly we have significant need for affordable housing in Wellfleet and also in the region. And, this is definitely a regional challenge. And I appreciate the community's desire to make sure that we're really preserving our year-round community. But that also has to be balanced with the fact that, we're going to be leveraging millions of dollars in state and federal and public resources. And we have a fair housing law in the United States, which requires that we not discriminate on lots of different characteristics. And certainly, one of them is where you live. And I'd also like to suggest too that one of the big challenges that we face in our region is an aging population and declining school enrollment. And what I think we're going to want to try to achieve is a balance between housing existing residents, but also creating opportunity for people to move to our community to take much needed jobs. You heard Jay Norton talk about earlier the great difficulty the town is having staffing key positions. And as our businesses and even nonprofits like the one I run really facing a challenge and needing to see people moving into our community. And so there will be an initial, hopefully a set aside that the town will request of the state in the rent up lottery, so that up to 70% of the units will be made available first to residents, most likely not just of Wellfleet, but of the Outer Cape region. But what we have found when we do these kind of rent up lotteries for similar projects in the region is that more than 85% of the residents actually end up being from the local community. And so I just want to emphasize it's a balancing act, but we could definitely use some young families with children to have a healthier, more vibrant Wellfleet school and fill much needed jobs that we have in the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to, hold on just a sec. Whoops, hold on.
Elaine may have something to add to this.
I just want to say that we have a lot of information on both 95 Lawrence, Maurice's campground, and all our housing programs on our housing website. And that's wellfleethousing.org. So I would really encourage everyone to check that out. And you can contact us by email or phone from that website. But Maurice's the committee's been doing a wonderful job of posting, and as has the 95 Lawrence Road. So I hope people will check that out.
Thanks, Elaine.
Charlie Rutz, do you want to ask a question? You can unmute.
Yeah, I'm concerned with the financial impact. I've just been listening for a little over an hour here, and we've talked about a project that's going to be $20 million. I guess that's the Lawrence Road one, which is about $450,000 a unit. And then I have no idea how many units are going to be in this campground things. I'd like to see some financials on this and the impact of that, and where that money's coming from. I'm sure we're living in a very small town here, and and it's a lot of a load to put on a small town. And I'd like to see some financials on this, and not generalities, hard numbers. Are they available?
So, Mr. Rutz, the numbers definitely are available, and they're part of an application on the Lawrence Road project that'll be going to the state. One of the beauties of a project this size is that while the project in total is going to cost over $20 million, about 90% of those funds are actually going to be coming from the state and federal government. And that the town's contribution, each unit is going to cost about $500,000 to build. And the town's contribution to that is likely to be in the neighborhood of $30,000 to $40,000. And those funds are fortunately don't have to come from the property tax payer in the town. That a couple of years ago, the state of Massachusetts allowed local communities to tax short-term rentals. And that short-term rental tax is currently generating in excess of $800,000 a year for the town of Wellfleet. And those funds can be used to fund projects like this.
Are they going to be used, or they can be used?
I think that's really ultimately up to town leaders, but I think preliminary discussions, and maybe Elaine and Harry could shed a little bit more light on this. That's the intent when we get to that point of the budget, that to be able to be using those funds.
So this document you're talking about is available?
Once the application goes to the state, which is probably going to be some point in January, that is a public document, and it'll be up on the website, and people can look at the pro forma on the project. Yeah.
Town website?
Yeah, on the town's website.
Okay, let's thanks, Charlie. I'm going to move on. Harry, did you want to answer some more questions on this? You have the next hand up.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Yeah, there just were a couple of things. I think Jay touched on something that's very important, that the vast majority of the funding for actually constructing the housing comes from tax credits available to the developer, from loans available to the developer based on rental income from the project. And it's not a $20 million check the town of Wellfleet's going to be writing. The most significant part of Wellfleet's contribution is the land itself. The one thing, I'm a numbers guy, but that drives some people nuts. But the one thing I want to highlight is over the 25 years between 1990 and 2015, 62% of the 25-year-old to 44-year-old population in this town disappeared. They moved away. The jobs weren't there. The housing wasn't there. The transportation infrastructure wasn't there. And that trend continuing has the potential to hollow out this community. And to me, the most important thing about housing overall, the numbers are frightening, the challenges are significant, but seeing a change of our community that is so significant and so different from the way Wellfleet was in 1976 when 1970 when I first set foot here. And that's kind of the big picture of what we're working to address. The challenges are significant. There's a lot of work ahead. There will be costs, but I think it's the soul of our community that we're talking about. Thank you.
Thanks, Harry. I appreciate it. Emily, you had your hand up next, so you can unmute. Thanks, Elaine.
Thanks.
Emily, sorry. Other hands? Anyone else? Other questions?
Oh, if there aren't any other questions, I wonder if Jay could talk a little about CDP's ADU Center. It sounds like the alphabet here. Community Development Partnerships Accessory Dwelling Unit Center.
Sure, thanks, Carl. So, we've been excited for a while about the prospect of being able to create housing basically in people's backyards through accessory dwelling units, sometimes called in-law apartments, or taking that space above a garage and building it into an apartment. And Wellfleet has certainly been one of the leaders in the Lower Cape of reforming zoning to try to make that easier for homeowners. But I think we're running into the challenge that the typical homeowner is not a real estate developer. And the idea of, figuring out zoning, and do you have enough septic capacity, and how would you design it, and how would you pay for it, and even the prospect of being a landlord can be awfully daunting. So we put together a proposal and shared it with Representative Sarah Peak to create an ADU resource center that we could basically hold the hand of homeowners from the beginning to actually securing a resident, and do that kind of step by step. And Rep Peak was able to secure $1 million in funding, state funding, to be used over the next 3 years to help do that. So not only will we be able to help homeowners through that building process and renting it up, and our colleagues at the Homeless Prevention Council, who are part of this project, can help provide services to residents to make sure they're successful tenants. But we also have some resources available for a $10,000 incentive to help homeowners with some of the initial development costs of survey work and the permitting and the design, and going out and perhaps getting a home equity loan to finance the construction. And so you can learn more about all of this at a special website that's been set up for this project. It's called lowercapehousing.org. That's lowercapehousing.org, and learn how we can help folks who are interested in creating accessory dwelling units do so.
So we've talked about a number of solutions, the big projects like Lawrence Road, which is rental housing, Maurice's Campground, which could be any combination of rental and home ownership and different price ranges. We've also talked about the buy down program, which is the one that Nancy Lang described, her selling her home, which is a home ownership program, and the ADU opportunity, which is another rental, year-round rental housing opportunity. So are there other things that we should be talking about? I'm kind of looking at all of you housing activists from town, things you've been working on, thinking about, that seasonal residents should be aware of.
Elaine, do you want to answer?
I'd love to start anyway, but before I do anything else, because Nancy Lang is here tonight, I want to thank her. It's so nice to meet you virtually, and you have changed somebody's life, and you've made such a contribution to our community. So thank you so very much. And you understood the buy down and explained it so beautifully. The buy down program is one of several things we do, and we're able to do it because of our Community Preservation Act funding, which all of us have the 3% surcharge on our taxes. So we are able to utilize community preservation funds. And now that we also have the Wellfleet Affordable Housing Trust, we're able to use donations and grants that come in. We have done 8 buy downs. We have made 8 existing homes affordable to 8 local families. And it's one of the few ways we can bring about home ownership right now. We do hope Maurice's might provide some, but the buy down program is one way we can do that. And as Nancy said, we buy down the cost of a home to an affordable rate that's approved by the state. A deed restriction goes on the home, so it stays affordable in perpetuity. If someone goes to sell it, they do make some profit, but not like those of us that can sell our house on the open market can do. But we've been able to make that happen with the community preservation funds, which we all pay, thank you, on your taxes and by donations. And I want to say that the three groups working on all of this are the Wellfleet Housing Authority, the Local Housing Partnership, and the Wellfleet Affordable Housing Trust. There are 19 volunteers all working together. And I started on the Housing Authority 20 years ago, and we were the only group then, 5 members with a $5,000 budget a year. We couldn't make much happen. Things are really, really cooking now, which is great. Another thing we do with our community preservation funds and donations is a down payment and closing cost assistance program for people, first-time home buyers that are looking to buy a home. They can stretch maybe to buy a market rate home, but they need help with their down payment and their closing cost assistance. So that's a grant program that we have. It's a loan that gets paid back if the property is ever sold. We also work with Habitat for Humanity. We have at least 8 Habitat homes in Wellfleet, and that is another way that homes get built. And many of you, I'm sure, donate to Habitat. So that is another way you can help support affordable home ownership. And since the Community Preservation Act was enacted in 2005, I think, starting in 2006, we started a rental assistance program using community preservation funds. And since 2006, we've kept it going, and we have assisted close to 100 families for a period up to 3 years to help maintain their rental, to keep it affordable to them, and to connect them with counseling to make sure that there's sustainability going forward. And one of our big success stories is that one of our original rental assistance clients became our second buy down owner. So it's a really important program to keep people that have those rare rentals in them, no matter what. So those are things I think that are creative. They're small, as we're saying. They're not the scale of Lawrence Road or Maurice's, but we're really we're just really trying to fill in the gaps as we can. But as Harry said, you know, we are seeing the community hollowed out. This is not going to happen soon enough. Anything that can be done to help support the programs we have really makes a difference.
So I wanted to ask a couple of questions that have come in, you know, via chats and things like that. So one of the questions is, I know that the Shellfish people have to live in Wellfleet, but is that true of anyone else in the community who has to, like if you're a fire person or a police officer, or you work for the town, do you have to live in the town? Is that required, or is it only the Shellfish people?
It's only the Shellfish people.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
if I may, the other exception is firefighters and police officers have to live within 15 miles of the territorial limits of the town. And considering that there's water to the east and west of us, the real estate where police and firefighters can live is much diminished in Wellfleet compared with someplace out in Western Mass. And a lot of that real estate is in areas where it's housing challenged as well. So that is a restriction as well. Thank you.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Charlie, did you want to ask another question, or did you just forget to lower your hand?
I do have another question, but I don't even know how to lower the hand. But is anybody looking at the bylaw that's in the town where you can only, that when they converted condos, only one condo was year round, and the other ones are all 3-season. Because there's 400 of those in the town. You want to talk about buildings that are already built. And they're, of course, they're privately owned, but I'm listening to a lot of creative ways of financing these things and getting people in there. Is there anybody looking at that?
Yes.
Yes, if I may. On the September 10th special town meeting, there is a proposed zoning amendment to eliminate the seasonal occupancy restriction for condominiums outside the national seashore. That may require for an individual condominium unit to amend its master deed and so forth, but the zoning restriction will be removed. And that's something that a number of people, including the select board, have been working on, and it will come to fruition hopefully in another 18 or 20 days.
Thank you. I think it would be good if we can just transition, just because we're running short on time, to talk a bit about how seasonal residents can get involved and help solve the problems that the town is facing when it comes to housing. I mean, I think, you know, Emily Ochtenberg before was talking about her serving on the committee that reviewed proposals for Lawrence Road and her work with the Maurice's Campground Task Force. And I think that's one way in which seasonal residents, which Emily is, she has a lot of expertise in housing. And so I think that kind of service is something that is, a lot of us have time. We're late in our careers or retired. That's one way I think that we can all be helpful. I'm interested in hearing other ideas people may have.
I just wanted to add that one of the things we could do is in the next newsletter, for example, for the seasonal residents, I'm going to try to summarize all of the kinds of things that have come up in the meeting. Like I had no idea about the lowercapehousing.org site, for example, so we can at least let members of the of WISRA know how to get in touch with this and how to find out and how to get help for those kinds of things. I think that would be really useful. Some of us just have no idea where to go for this kind of information.
Kathleen, I know you've thought a lot about this. You're right in the middle of the real estate storm. So what do you have to suggest here?
So for those of you that don't know, I'm a realtor for Kinlan Grover and have been selling real estate here for 18 years. And I live here in Wellfleet for 22 years. And I have been a volunteer with Habitat for all of that time and have gotten involved here at our town level as well. And one of the things that came to my mind when we're talking about what can people do to help is communication. You know, look at Melissa. That is who we're talking about for people that need housing here. When we have projects that come up and abutters and neighbors are derogatory or have negative things to say about it because they don't really understand what our challenge is, and that we are looking at young families and young people that are a vibrant part of having a successful community, and that the communication to make sure that people understand that when we say affordable housing, when we go back to what Jay said before, folks that live here that are working full-time jobs, multiple jobs, owning businesses, running departments, you know, for our municipal government cannot afford to buy housing on what they're earning. So the word affordable housing is not a negative in the way that the connotation sometimes can be. And so I think the more that we can have people really understand the problem and understand who we're trying to help, and spreading that good karma, that we need affordable housing. Yes, in my neighborhood. Yes, in my town. That would be tremendously helpful. I work with a lot of people that have a lot of money and are buying houses here. One person can make a difference. Nancy was a teacher. Nancy is not somebody that has tons of money that she could afford to just say, you know, I'm going to let my house go. That was a conscious decision on her part to say, I took that house out of the year-round housing stock when I bought it as a second home. And what she said to me was, Kathleen, I want to put that back. As second homeowners and as people that have more money, if there is a creative way for you to say, I want to sell my house, let me reach out and say, I want to sell it to somebody local. If there's a way for you to say, you know what, I can donate, you know, with Habitat, we sponsor houses. A house sponsor is $50,000. If somebody could come up with $50,000, if as a second homeowner association, you could come up with $50,000 to donate to affordable housing, to continue the programs to try to help some of our younger people and families to find homes, I think that would be really helpful.
Thanks, Kathleen. Sharon, did you have something more you want to say?
I was just going to say that I know you all were sponsors of our Housing Angels program last summer, and we've been doing a number of different things to try to really keep awareness high, both with Housing Angels. We had a wonderful event at What Theater, with a musical event. It was very feel good. And there's several galleries that are opening with home focused shows. Some of the proceeds are going to the Wellfleet Affordable Housing Trust. So any kind of support for public activities, especially things that are raising money that go to the Housing Trust, those monies allow us to do things that we can't always do with CPA funds or with money that we get from the town. So consider that. Thank you.
Harry, did you want to have one more thing to
Thank
say
you.
here?
Thank you, Carl. Very, very quickly. Expertise. We really appreciate Carl and Gail and Emily and anybody else who's got expertise that they can bring to this and help us shape this in a positive way. Support, moral support, financial support. Money is always useful, and when you're building housing. An understanding of the role that housing and housing shortages play in shaping a community, and to help understand how addressing those shortages can change a community. And communication. We really appreciate the opportunity to speak to this many people this evening about why we feel so passionate about this and why it's so important to us. So thank you.
Thanks, Harry. Bob, you have your hand up.
Sorry. Yeah, well, on my behalf, I'm a reasonably new seasonal resident in Wellfleet. So I want to thank everyone who's been kind enough to show up tonight and to share information. I'm still in the stage where I'm trying to gather as much insight as I can about the local market, both for employment as well as for housing. I was curious in your efforts to both bring in external funding as well as to deal with this as a regional problem, whether you'd looked to other vacation areas, resort areas, and the like to see what solutions they've generated, unless perhaps they've, as you said, hollowed out their communities entirely. But it strikes me that Vail, Aspen, the Hamptons, even Florence and Venice have tried various things to maintain a vibrant local community, while at the same time taking advantage of the resources that attract people. So have we tried to see, rather than necessarily producing all our own solutions, local solutions, find out what other solutions others have tried and succeeded with?
Anyone want to respond to that? I know that there are some of these other communities that have done some creative things, but I'm not really familiar with them myself.
I think we do look around and see what else is going on in other communities. Truro, for example, took the lead in looking at the issue of year-round use of currently seasonal condominiums. The accessory dwelling unit project that's shown up all up and down the Cape now. And there are other programs in other communities that we look at, and we appreciate anything that we should look at being directed toward us also.
So, are there any more questions, Susan, on the chat?
Can I can't find the way.
It's okay. Karen, go ahead.
You can see
Okay.
your hand.
So, last year we were in Telluride for a few days. They are everywhere you went in Telluride. They have signs up begging for housing for their employees, for their locals. This is going on in Aspen. I believe they're having the same problems. This is not unique to Wellfleet. This is happening everywhere where large vacation communities are growing and locals are taking advantage of the money that they can get for their housing, but in the same time, pushing out the people that we all need here. This is not unique. That's all.
Thank you.
So if I could, I think we're probably gone through most of the issues here. I think that the ad that was showing on the screen when we first got on this call about we can't afford to live without the people who can't afford to live here has actually been demonstrated here during this forum. Melissa, Ginger, Jay, these are all younger people. And it's really an intergenerational problem. And I think Harry, summarized the data on that in terms of what's happened in Wellfleet to the school population, to young families. And I think the term Elaine used of hollowing out the community is something that we all need to be concerned about. And I think that the association probably can do a lot of things that could help alleviate some of the stress that we've in fact created.
I think that's right. If there aren't any other questions, I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank Carl and everybody who made time to come tonight. This is obviously not going to be solved in one meeting. So I just wanted to say how much we appreciate everyone taking the time to be here. This obviously will be continued, and we will make as much information available in our newsletters and on our Facebook page for information for people who want to do more. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan.
Thanks. Good night.